Chapter 774. Angie widened her eyes in shock. She tried to move the scepter in her hands but soon found that she was being held back by an invisible force. Amidst her shock, Angie tried her best to increase her spiritual energy output in an attempt to break free. On top of that, she had also pretty much used up all of her spiritual energy to summon the Hand of Darkness. The force holding Angie down was terrifying, and there was no way for her to get out. Orzo and Pierce sprang into action, exploding with all the spiritual energy they had and lighting up with spiritual flames before rushing at Wilbur. They knew that Angie was in grave danger and were trying to save her from Wilbur. Just then, however, two long swords with jagged blades slashed through the air, attacking both men. The terrifying power of the attack scared both of them witless. They let out a cry and each formed a spiritual shield in front of themselves. The spiritual shields burned brightly with spiritual flames. They were covered in runes and looked firm as a rock. However, the two swords proved to be even more powerful, destroying both shields by piercing right through them and nailing both men to the floor. Pierce and Orzo died at the same time. Eileen slowly made her way over. Angie's expression contorted wildly, laced with immense fear. "How dare you, Eileen? The Kiwanis Club won't let you go for this," she screamed. Eileen chuckled. "Are you seriously threatening me when you're seconds away from your demise?" Angie struggled wildly to break free of the forces holding her down, howling the entire time, "Don't forget about our club's rules. You'll be executed for killing a fellow member." "I didn't kill you, Trevor Penn did. Take a good look." Eileen smiled. Just then, the dragon's head behind Wilbur stopped chanting and opened its eyes. At the same time, a translucent figure of the ruler of hell appeared behind Angie. The ruler of hell sported a crown on its head. Its gaze was cold and furious. It was dressed in long, dark robes filled with pictures of demons, radiating an air of authority. A deathly aura surged out as soon as the ruler of hell appeared, enveloping Angie. The old woman widened her eyes in terror, struggling with all her might. However, the ruler of hell had already reached its hands out, entering her body before retracting. A pale, ghostly figure seemed to be slowly pulled out of Angie's body. Angie looked nothing but terrified, letting out a feeble wail. How were you able to use corpse condemnation?" Yet just as the words left her lips, Angie keeled over lifelessly. Corpse condemnation was a higher order spell. It required an immense amount of spiritual energy and a good grasp of the laws of death to activate it successfully. Casting the corpse of condemnation required extremely complicated gestures or incantations. Wilbur had done neither. How had he managed to activate such a terrifying spell? Angie did not get an answer to her question until her death. What she did not know was that Wilbur's advancement to a new level and absorbing the power of death allowed him to understand the laws of death to a certain degree. His powerful spiritual energy was also more than capable of powering a spell of this degree. The dragon's head on his back had also gained a new power after Wilbur's advancement. This was what allowed Wilbur to unleash corpse condemnation upon Angie, pulling her soul out of her body and holding it hostage. Just then, the soul that the ruler of hell had pulled out was still struggling and wailing soundlessly. However, the terrifying power of the spell caused her to shrink in size. Eventually, she turned into a ball of light about the size of a fist, floating in midair. The ball of light was completely confined and held down by the invisible force of runes, and there was no escape. The ruler of hell finally faded away, and Wilbur walked away up to Angie's soul coldly.